Before we begin this incredible true story of a successful architect who lost everything and ended up homeless with her 3 children, if you believe that God can turn your greatest failure into your greatest purpose, hit that like button now. If you're new here, subscribe and turn on notifications because we share real testimonies of people who discovered that rock bottom became their foundation for comeback. Share this video with someone who needs to remember that their current struggle might be preparing them for their future strength. Now let's dive into Kate's amazing journey from prosperity to poverty to purpose. Single mom, lost her job and home. What happened at the food bank changed everything. Catherine Kate Williams stood in her spacious office on the 15th floor of the Peachtree Tower in downtown Atlanta, looking out at the city skyline she had helped shape over the past 12 years. At 38, she was one of the most respected architects in Georgia, known for designing sustainable commercial buildings that had won numerous awards. Her phone buzzed with a text from her ex-husband, Marcus. "Kids want to know if you're coming to Lily's soccer game Saturday." Kate smiled, thinking of her 3 children, Ethan, 10, Lily, 8, and little Noah, 5, who were the center of her world, despite the challenging divorce 2 years prior. "Ms. Williams, there are FBI agents here to see you," her assistant Jennifer announced over the intercom, her voice trembling with concern. Kate's blood ran cold. FBI agents? She had no idea what this could be about, but she straightened her blazer and walked to the conference room where 2 serious-looking federal agents waited. "Ms. Williams, I'm Agent Rodriguez, and this is Agent Thompson. We need to discuss your involvement with Morrison Construction Group's federal housing contracts." "I don't understand. I designed several buildings for Morrison, but what involvement are you referring to?" Agent Rodriguez opened a thick file. "Ms. Williams, Morrison Construction has been under investigation for federal contract fraud. They've been billing the government for materials never used and pocketing millions in taxpayer money. That's impossible. I oversee all material specifications personally. Every project I design meets exact federal standards." "Ma'am, we have evidence that suggests otherwise. Your architectural firm was listed as a co-conspirator in inflating material costs and approving substandard construction." Kate felt the room spinning. "Agents, I had no knowledge of any fraud. I'm a licensed architect with an impeccable reputation. I would never compromise safety or integrity." "Ms. Williams, your signature appears on dozens of documents approving materials that were never actually used in construction. We'll need you to come with us for questioning." As the agents escorted Kate from her office in handcuffs, she caught sight of Jennifer crying at her desk and colleagues staring in shock. Her phone rang incessantly. Reporters who had somehow already gotten wind of the story. The next 48 hours became a blur of lawyers, interrogations, and devastating revelations. Morrison Construction CEO had been systematically forging Kate's signature on fraudulent documents, using her stellar reputation to legitimize their criminal operation. "Kate, even though you're innocent, this is going to be a long legal battle," her attorney David Chen explained grimly. "Morrison made sure your name was on everything. It'll take months, maybe years to clear your reputation. But I have 3 children to support. I can't wait years. I'm afraid it gets worse. The Georgia Architecture Board is suspending your license pending investigation. And Kate, the FBI has frozen your business accounts as part of the asset forfeiture process." Kate's world collapsed entirely. Within a week, she had lost her job, her professional license, her savings, and her reputation. The media portrayed her as the mastermind behind a multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. When she couldn't make her mortgage payment on her Buckhead home, foreclosure proceedings began immediately. Standing in her empty house as movers took her furniture to pay legal fees, Kate wondered how her life had crumbled so completely in just 2 weeks. She had no idea that this was only the beginning of a journey that would strip away everything she thought defined her, but ultimately reveal who she truly was meant to be. 6 months after the FBI raid, Kate found herself sitting in her 2015 Honda Pilot in the parking lot of Walmart on Moreland Avenue, watching other families walk in and out while her 3 children slept in the back seat. The SUV had become their home after losing their Buckhead house to foreclosure. "Mommy, I'm hungry," whispered Noah, rubbing his sleepy eyes. The 5-year-old had stopped asking when they were going home weeks ago. Kate checked her wallet. $3.47 and some loose change. She had sold everything of value: her jewelry, designer clothes, even her laptop. The legal fees to prove her innocence had consumed her savings, and despite her lawyer's efforts, clearing her name was taking longer than anyone anticipated. "I know, baby. We're going to get some food soon," Kate replied, though she had no idea how. Ethan, her 10-year-old, had become unnaturally quiet since they'd been living in the car. At school, he told classmates they were between houses to avoid the shame of admitting they were homeless. Lily tried to stay positive, but Kate had caught her crying silently at night. "Kate Williams, is that really you?" A voice called out as she stepped out of the car to stretch. Kate turned to see Melissa Morrison, wife of Jonathan Morrison, the CEO who had destroyed her life. Melissa was loading designer shopping bags into her Mercedes SUV, wearing clothes that probably cost more than Kate's last month of car payments. "Hello, Melissa," Kate said quietly, suddenly aware of her wrinkled clothes and unwashed hair. "Oh my God, what happened to you? You look..." Melissa's voice trailed off as she noticed the car packed with belongings and the children inside. "Your husband happened to me," Kate replied, fighting back tears of humiliation. "Kate, I'm so sorry about the misunderstanding with Jonathan's business. I heard things got complicated, but surely you've sorted it all out by now." "Complicated?" Kate's voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. "Melissa, I lost everything. My home, my career, my reputation. Your husband used my name to steal millions from the government, and I'm living in my car with my 3 children. Melissa looked genuinely shocked. "Kate, I had no idea it was that serious. Jonathan said it was just some paperwork issues that would blow over. It's been 6 months, Melissa. 6 months of legal battles to prove I'm innocent while my children sleep in a parking lot every night. I don't know what to say. Is there anything I can do?" Kate looked at this woman whose husband had destroyed her life, now standing beside a car worth more than Kate used to make in a year. The irony was suffocating. "Actually, yes. Could you spare some change? We haven't eaten since yesterday." Melissa quickly handed Kate a $20 bill, her face flushed with embarrassment and guilt. "Kate, I'm going to talk to Jonathan about this. This isn't right." As Melissa drove away in her luxury vehicle, Kate stood in the Walmart parking lot holding the $20 that would feed her children tonight, wondering how she had fallen so far so fast. "God," she whispered to the Atlanta sky, "if you're still there, if you still care about us, we need help. I can't do this alone anymore." Kate didn't know that her desperate prayer was about to set in motion a series of divine interventions that would transform not just her life, but her understanding of what truly mattered. But first, she had to face the most humiliating moment of her journey, her first visit to a food bank as a client instead of a donor. The next morning, Kate sat in the parking lot of the Atlanta Community Food Bank on Ponce de Leon Avenue, watching families walk through the doors she had never imagined crossing as anything other than a volunteer. For years, she had donated money to this very organization during the holidays, never dreaming she would one day need their services. "Are we going grocery shopping, Mommy?" asked Lily, looking hopefully at the building. "Something like that, sweetheart," Kate replied, her voice barely audible. Inside, Kate filled out paperwork that required her to prove her desperate circumstances. The intake coordinator, Mrs. Henderson, a kind African-American woman in her 60s, reviewed Kate's documents with compassion. "Ms. Williams, I see here you used to live in Buckhead. That's quite a change. What happened, honey?" Kate's throat tightened as she explained her situation. Around her, she could hear other families sharing their stories. Job losses, medical bankruptcies, unexpected crises that had brought them to this place. "The good news is you qualify for emergency food assistance," Mrs. Henderson said gently. "The difficult news is we're only allowed to help each family once every 30 days, and our supplies are limited." Kate was handed a number and told to wait. As she sat with her children in the crowded waiting area, she overheard conversations that broke her heart. A single father explaining to his daughter why they couldn't afford her school lunch anymore. An elderly couple debating whether to buy medicine or food with their social security check. "Number 47, called a volunteer. Kate's hands shook as she approached the distribution area. The volunteer, a teenager who couldn't have been older than 17, looked at her with pity as he filled her bags with canned goods, rice and day-old bread. "Ma'am, we don't have any fresh vegetables today, but there's peanut butter and some pasta," he said kindly. "Thank you," Kate whispered, humbled by the generosity of people who barely knew her. As they loaded the food into their car, Ethan finally spoke up. "Mom, are we poor now?" The question hit Kate like a physical blow. How do you explain to a 10-year-old that their mother, who used to design buildings worth millions, now can't afford to buy groceries? "We're going through a hard time, baby, but we have each other, and we're going to be okay." "When can we go home?" Noah asked for the first time in weeks. Kate's carefully maintained composure finally cracked. Sitting in the driver's seat of her car outside the food bank, she began to cry, deep, soul-wrenching sobs that she had been holding back for months. "Mommy, don't cry," Lily said, reaching forward to pat her shoulder. "Remember what you used to tell us, that God takes care of the birds and flowers, so He'll take care of us too." Kate looked at her 8-year-old daughter in the rearview mirror, amazed at the faith this child still maintained, despite everything they'd been through. "You're right, baby girl. You're absolutely right." That evening, as her children ate peanut butter sandwiches for dinner in the Walmart parking lot, Kate made a decision. She would swallow her pride completely and call her estranged parents in Tennessee, the same parents who had disowned her for having children out of wedlock and refused to acknowledge their grandchildren. But when she dialed their number, a recorded message informed her that the line had been disconnected. As Kate hung up the phone, she realized she was truly alone in the world, with 3 children depending on her. What she didn't know was that someone had been watching her family's struggle with growing concern, and tomorrow would bring an encounter that would change everything. Kate woke up the next morning to the sound of rain pattering against the car windows. The Atlanta weather had turned cold and wet, making their situation even more miserable. She had parked behind a 24-hour Waffle House on Memorial Drive, hoping the manager wouldn't notice them sleeping there. "Mommy, I need to use the bathroom," Noah said, squirming in his car seat. "Okay, baby, let's go inside and see if they'll let us use their restroom." The Waffle House manager, a middle-aged man named Carl, looked at Kate's family with a mixture of sympathy and concern as they walked in looking disheveled and desperate. "Ma'am, are you all okay? I noticed your car's been out there all night." Kate's face burned with embarrassment. "I'm sorry, we just needed a safe place to sleep. We'll move on if you need us to." Carl studied her face for a moment. "You got kids with you. Tell you what, y'all can use the restroom and wash up, no charge. Thank you so much. You have no idea how much that means." Day, while the children cleaned up in the restroom, Kate tried to make herself presentable with wet paper towels and hand soap. When they returned to the car, she noticed something that made her heart skip a beat. Tucked under her windshield wiper was a white envelope with Kate Williams written in elegant handwriting. With shaking hands, she opened the envelope and found a handwritten note on expensive stationery. "Dear Kate, I know you don't know me, but I've been watching your family's struggle, and my heart is breaking for you. I was once where you are now, lost, desperate, and thinking God had forgotten me, but He hadn't, and He hasn't forgotten you either. Inside this envelope is enough money to get you and your children into a motel for a week. More importantly, there's a business card for someone who can help you rebuild your life. God told me to find you today. Please, don't let pride keep you from accepting this gift. Your children need you to be strong enough to accept help when it comes. There are better days ahead. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. A friend who cares. Kate's hands trembled as she looked inside the envelope. There were 10 crisp $100 bills and a business card for Sarah Mitchell, director of Second Chances Ministry, job training and housing assistance for families in crisis. "What is it, Mommy?" Ethan asked, seeing his mother's shocked expression. It's help, baby. Someone wants to help us." Kate looked around the parking lot frantically, trying to see who could have left this note. The Waffle House was nearly empty, and she saw no one who looked like they might be her mysterious benefactor. She called the number on the card immediately. "Second Chances Ministry. This is Sarah Mitchell speaking. Ms. Mitchell, my name is Kate Williams. Someone left me your card with a note saying you help families in crisis." "Kate Williams, I've been expecting your call. A very generous donor contacted me yesterday and asked me to be ready to help a family named Williams. She said you were an architect who had lost everything through no fault of your own." "How did she know about me?" "I have no idea, dear, but I've learned not to question how God works." "Kate, can you meet me at our office this afternoon? I think we can help you get back on your feet." "Yes, absolutely, we'll be there." After hanging up, Kate sat in her car staring at the note and the money, tears streaming down her face. For the first time in months, she felt a flicker of hope. "Kids," she announced, "we're getting a hotel room tonight with real beds and a shower." The children cheered with excitement they hadn't shown in weeks. As Kate drove toward the address Sarah Mitchell had given her, she had no idea that her mysterious benefactor was closer than she imagined, or that this was just the beginning of a series of divine interventions that would restore everything she had lost, and more. The Second Chances Ministry was housed in a modest building in East Atlanta, but as Kate walked through the doors with her 3 children, she felt something she hadn't experienced in months: hope. Sarah Mitchell was a petite woman in her 50s, with kind eyes and a warm smile that immediately put Kate at ease. Her office walls were covered with photos of families who had successfully rebuilt their lives through the program. "Kate, please sit down. Tell me about your situation from the beginning." As Kate recounted her story, the FBI raid, the fraud charges, losing her home and career, Sarah listened with genuine compassion, occasionally taking notes. "And you had no knowledge of Morrison's illegal activities?" "None whatsoever. My attorney says we're making progress proving my innocence, but it's taking forever, and I've run out of money to survive while we wait." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "Kate, what I'm about to tell you might sound too good to be true, but I believe God orchestrates these connections. We just received a substantial donation, specifically designated for a family with your exact circumstances." "What do you mean?" 3 days ago, a woman came here, well-dressed, expensive car, wouldn't give her name. She said God had laid it on her heart to help an architect named Kate Williams, who had lost everything due to someone else's fraud. She left a check for $50,000. Kate's jaw dropped. $50,000 for me specifically. She knew details about your situation that I don't understand how she could have known. She said you had 3 children, that you'd been living in your car, and that you were too proud to ask your family for help. How is that possible? I've never met anyone who fits that description. Kate, in my 15 years running this ministry, I've learned that God works in mysterious ways. What matters is that help is here now. Sarah explained that the donation would cover temporary housing, job training, and living expenses, while Kate rebuilt her career and cleared her legal situation. "There's more," Sarah continued. "The donor also arranged for you to meet with Patricia Homes, a construction company that specializes in affordable housing. They're looking for an architect with your exact experience. But my license is suspended. They know about your situation. They're willing to hire you as a consultant while your license is being restored." "Kate, this company was specifically told to expect your call." That afternoon, Kate found herself in the offices of Patricia Homes, meeting with the owner, David Patricia, a man in his 60s who had built his reputation developing affordable housing projects. "Ms. Williams, I've reviewed your portfolio. Your sustainable design work is exactly what we need for our next project. a 200-unit affordable housing complex funded by a private foundation. Mr. Patricia, I have to be honest about my legal situation. Kate, I know everything about Morrison Construction's fraud and your involvement, or lack thereof. My lawyers have reviewed your case. You're innocent, and everyone in the industry knows it. Morrison's reputation was shady long before they dragged you into their mess. Ooh. So you'd really hire me despite everything? Not despite everything, because of everything. Kate, you've lost everything and still maintained your integrity. That's the kind of person I want designing homes for families who deserve better. When Kate returned to pick up her children from the Second Chances Ministry, Sarah had more news. Kate, I just received another call. Someone has arranged for you and your children to stay in a furnished apartment in Virginia Highland, rent-free for 6 months while you get back on your feet. Who is doing all this? I need to thank them. She insists on remaining anonymous. But Kate, she left another message for you. Sarah handed Kate another note in the same elegant handwriting. Kate, this is just the beginning. God is restoring everything you lost, but He's also preparing you for something greater than you've ever imagined. Trust the process. Your trials are becoming your testimony. As Kate drove to their new temporary apartment with her children chattering excitedly in the back seat, she realized that her mysterious benefactor had appeared at exactly the right moment, when she was broken enough to accept help and ready to understand that her real treasure wasn't what she owned, but who she was becoming. But the biggest revelation was still to come. 3 weeks into their new arrangement, Kate's life had begun to stabilize in ways that felt almost surreal. The furnished apartment in Virginia Highland was beautiful and safe. Her children were enrolled in a good school nearby, and her work with Patricia Holmes was both fulfilling and well-paying. "Mommy, this place feels like home again," Lily said one evening as they sat around the dinner table, their first real family dinners in months. "It does, sweetheart. God is taking care of us." Kate had started attending a small community church near their apartment, partly out of gratitude and partly because she needed to understand how such miraculous provision was possible. The pastor, Reverend James Carter, had become a source of wisdom and encouragement. "Kate," he had told her the previous Sunday, "sometimes God allows us to lose everything we think we need so He can give us everything we actually need." But on a rainy Thursday morning, Kate was reviewing architectural plans at a coffee shop on Ponce de Leon when she overheard a conversation at the next table that made her blood freeze. "Jonathan, the FBI is getting too close. They're starting to connect all the dots about the Williams woman." Kate recognized the voice immediately. Melissa Morrison, the woman she had encountered at Walmart weeks earlier. "Melissa, keep your voice down," came Jonathan Morrison's reply. Kate Williams was the perfect fall guy. Her reputation was so clean that no one suspected we were using her name to legitimize everything. "But Jonathan, I saw her living in her car with her children. She's lost everything." "That's not my problem. She was convenient and now she's expendable. Let her lawyers sort it out." Kate's hands shook as she listened to the man who had destroyed her life casually discussing her situation like a business transaction. But then, Melissa said something that changed everything. "Jonathan, I can't live with this anymore. I've been anonymously helping her family and seeing their situation up close. We ruined an innocent woman's life." "You've been what?" "I hired a private investigator to track her situation. When I saw how desperate things had gotten, I started the anonymous donations through that ministry." "Jonathan, she was living in her car with 3 babies." Kate nearly dropped her coffee cup. Melissa Morrison, the wife of the man who had destroyed her life, had been her mysterious guardian angel. "Melissa, you're being ridiculous. Stop the donations immediately." "No, Jonathan, I won't. And I'm done staying quiet about what really happened. Kate Williams deserves to have her name cleared. If you turn against me on this, you'll lose everything too. Then so be it. I can't sleep at night knowing what we've done to that family." Kate quietly left the coffee shop and immediately called her attorney, David Chen. David, I just overheard Jonathan Morrison confessing to framing me, and his wife admitted she's been my anonymous benefactor. Kate, that's huge. If his wife is willing to testify, we can end this immediately. That afternoon, Kate did something that took every ounce of courage she possessed. She drove to the Morrison mansion in Buckhead and rang the doorbell. Melissa answered, and when she saw Kate standing there, her face went white. Kate, I heard you at the coffee shop today, Melissa. I know you've been helping my family. Melissa's eyes filled with tears. Kate, I'm so sorry. I'm so incredibly sorry for what Jonathan did to you. Melissa, why? Why did you help us after what your husband did? Because I have children too. And when I saw you that day at Walmart, when I saw what we had done to your babies, I couldn't live with myself. Are you willing to testify against Jonathan? Melissa took a deep breath. Yes. I've been gathering evidence for weeks. Kate, I have recordings, documents, everything you need to prove your innocence. As Kate drove away from the Morrison mansion with a box of evidence that would clear her name and restore her reputation, she realized that God had used her enemy's own wife to become her rescuer. The woman, who should have been her adversary, had risked everything to save her family. Sometimes, Kate thought, angels come from the most unexpected places. 6 weeks later, Kate stood in the federal courthouse in downtown Atlanta, watching as FBI agents led Jonathan Morrison away in handcuffs. The same building where her nightmare had begun was now witnessing her complete vindication. Ms. Williams? Agent Rodriguez approached her with an expression far different from their first encounter. On behalf of the federal government, I want to formally apologize for the ordeal you've endured. Your name has been completely cleared and all charges dismissed. Kate's attorney, David Chen, smiled broadly as he shook her hand. Kate, it's over. The Georgia Architecture Board is reinstating your license immediately, and Morrison Construction is facing federal racketeering charges. The evidence Melissa Morrison had provided was devastating. Hidden recordings revealed Jonathan's systematic fraud scheme and his deliberate plan to use Kate's reputation as cover. Bank records showed millions in stolen federal funds, and forged documents proved Kate's signatures had been falsified. What happens to Melissa? Kate asked, genuinely concerned for the woman who had risked everything to help her. She'll testify as the government's key witness, but in exchange for her cooperation and the evidence she provided, she'll receive immunity. She's also filing for divorce and seeking witness protection. That evening, Kate received a call from Melissa. Kate, I wanted to talk to you before I disappear into witness protection. Melissa, I don't know how to thank you for what you've done. Kate, you don't understand. You saved me. I saved you? How? Seeing your faith, watching how you handled losing everything with such grace and dignity. It showed me what real character looks like. I'd been living in a mansion built on lies, and you were living in a car, but raising your children with more integrity than I'd ever seen. Melissa, we all make mistakes. What matters is that you chose to do the right thing. Kate, there's something else. Jonathan doesn't know this, but I've been setting aside money in a trust fund for your children's education. It's clean money from my inheritance before I married him. I want them to have opportunities. Kate was speechless. This woman continued to amaze her with acts of generosity and repentance. There's more, Melissa continued. I've arranged for you to receive a contract with the Morrison Foundation. That's my family's charitable foundation that's completely separate from Jonathan's business. They want you to design a new community center for low-income families in East Atlanta. The following Monday, Kate walked into her new office at Patricia Homes as the company's head architect. The local news had covered her vindication extensively, and architectural firms across the Southeast were calling with job offers. But Kate had chosen to stay with David Patricia, the man who had believed in her when no one else would. Kate, David said during their first official meeting, I have a proposition for you. What would you think about starting a non-profit division of our company focused on affordable housing for families in crisis? What do you mean? I mean using your experience, both professional and personal, to design homes and communities specifically for families who are rebuilding their lives after major setbacks. Kate's heart raced. David, that's exactly what I've been thinking about. During those months in the car, I kept thinking about how many other families must be going through similar struggles. The Morrison Foundation wants to fund the first project, 50 homes for families transitioning out of homelessness. Kate, they specifically requested you as the architect. That weekend, Kate took her children to the construction site where their journey back to stability had begun. Patricia Homes was breaking ground on the affordable housing complex that would house 200 families. "Mommy," Ethan said, "are you going to design houses for other families like us who lost their homes?" "Yes, baby. God taught us what it feels like to need help, so now we can help other people who are hurting." "Will they be good houses?" Noah asked. Kate smiled, remembering her own fears about affordable housing before experiencing homelessness herself. "They'll be beautiful, safe, and filled with hope." As Kate watched her children play on the construction site, where she would soon build homes for other struggling families, she realized that losing everything had been the beginning of finding her true purpose. She wasn't just an architect anymore. She was a wounded healer, someone who could design more than buildings. She could design hope for families who had lost theirs. The woman who had once designed luxury commercial buildings was about to become the architect of second chances. 1 year after her vindication, Kate stood before a packed auditorium at the Georgia Institute of Technology, addressing graduating architecture students. Her story had become legendary in professional circles, the architect who lost everything and found her true calling. "Students, when I graduated from this same program 15 years ago, I thought success meant designing the tallest buildings and earning the highest fees," Kate began, looking out at the eager faces. "I never imagined that my greatest architectural achievement would come from sleeping in my car." The audience was captivated as Kate shared her journey from penthouse offices to parking lots, and how that experience had transformed her understanding of what homes really meant to families. "Today, I want to show you something," Kate said, clicking to a slide showing aerial views of New Hope Village, the 50-home community she had designed for families transitioning out of homelessness. The development was revolutionary. Instead of institutional-looking affordable housing, Kate had created a neighborhood of diverse, attractive homes with community gardens, a playground designed by children who had lived in cars, and a community center that served as both a resource hub and gathering place. Every design decision in New Hope Village came from my family's experience of having nothing, Kate explained. The extra-large kitchen windows so children can see their parents cooking from the living room. Because when you've been hungry, seeing food being prepared brings comfort. The covered porches where neighbors naturally gather because isolation makes poverty worse. The community garden where families can grow their own food because dignity matters as much as nutrition. After her speech, Kate was approached by Dr. Patricia Williams, Dean of the Architecture School. "Kate, we'd like to offer you a position developing our new program in social architecture, designing for communities in crisis. Your work is pioneering a whole new field." The offer was tempting, but Kate had already committed to something bigger. "Dr. Williams, I'm honored, but I'm about to launch something that might interest you even more." Kate explained her new venture, Hope Builders, a national non-profit that would train architects, social workers, and formerly homeless individuals to work together, designing affordable housing communities across the country. We're starting with 5 cities: Atlanta, Detroit, Phoenix, Seattle, and Miami. Each location will be staffed by architects who have experienced housing insecurity themselves, because you can't design dignity for others if you haven't lost your own. The concept was gaining national attention. The Department of Housing and Urban Development had contacted Kate about developing federal guidelines for trauma-informed housing design. Architectural Digest had featured New Hope Village on their cover with the headline, "The Architect Who Learned to Build Hope." But the moment that meant most to Kate came during a community meeting at New Hope Village, when Maria Santos, a single mother who had been living in her car with 2 children, stood up to speak. 6 months ago, my kids and I were sleeping in a Walmart parking lot, just like Ms. Kate and her family did, Maria said, tears in her eyes. Today, my daughter brought her friend home from school for the first time in 2 years because she wasn't ashamed of where we live. Ms. Kate didn't just design us a house, she designed us back our dignity. Kate's own children, now thriving in their permanent home in Virginia Highland, had become advocates for homeless families at their school. Ethan, now 12, had started a program collecting school supplies for children living in cars. Lily, 10, volunteered at the food bank, where they had once been clients. And Noah, 7, told everyone who would listen that his mommy builds houses for people who need hugs. "Mommy," Lily had asked recently, "are you sad that the bad man took away your old job?" Kate had hugged her daughter close. "No, sweetheart. If that hadn't happened, I never would have found my real job." The Morrison case had concluded with Jonathan receiving a 15-year federal prison sentence. Melissa had successfully entered witness protection and started a new life helping domestic violence survivors. She still sent anonymous donations to Hope Builders, continuing her journey of making amends. David Patricia had become Kate's business partner in Hope Builders, contributing the construction expertise while Kate provided the design vision and lived experience. "Kate," he told her during one of their planning meetings, "you've revolutionized how we think about affordable housing. You've proven that poor people don't deserve poor design." But as Kate drove home through the streets of Atlanta, passing the Waffle House where they had once begged to use the restroom and the food bank where they had received emergency assistance, she reflected on how drastically her definition of success had changed. She was no longer the architect of prestigious commercial buildings, but she was building something far more important: communities where hope could take root and flourish. Tomorrow, she would break ground on Hope Builders' second development, and next month she would testify before Congress about the connection between housing design and human dignity. Kate Williams had lost everything and found her true calling. 3 years after starting Hope Builders, Kate found herself walking through the halls of the U.S. Capitol, preparing to address the Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs. Her testimony would influence federal housing policy for decades to come. Ms. Williams, Senator Elizabeth Warren greeted her before the hearing. "Your work has caught the attention of lawmakers across party lines. Housing designed with dignity shouldn't be a partisan issue." "Senator, when my children and I were sleeping in our car, we didn't care about politics. We just needed a safe place to call home." The committee room was packed with housing advocates, architects, and formerly homeless individuals who had traveled from across the country to support Kate's testimony. "Honorable Senators," Kate began, "3 years ago, I was a homeless single mother living in my car. Today, Hope Builders operates in 12 states, has housed over 2,000 families, and has fundamentally changed how America thinks about affordable housing." Kate's presentation included before and after photos of families who had moved from cars and shelters into Hope Builders communities. The transformation wasn't just in their living situations. Children's school performance improved, parents found stable employment, and communities formed naturally around thoughtful design. The traditional model of affordable housing concentrates poverty and strips away dignity, Kate explained. "Our model integrates families into thriving neighborhoods and designs homes that restore hope." Senator Marco Rubio asked, "Ms. Williams, what's the cost difference between your approach and traditional affordable housing?" "Senator, upfront costs are 15% higher, but long-term outcomes are dramatically better. Families stay housed, children perform better in school, and communities thrive. The return on investment is substantial when measured in human flourishing rather than just construction costs." After her testimony, Kate was approached by Housing and Urban Development Secretary Marcia Fudge. "Ms. Williams, The President wants to include Hope Builders' design principles in our national housing strategy. We're prepared to fund a $500 million pilot program based on your model. That evening, Kate called her children from her hotel room in Washington, D.C. "Mommy, did you tell the important people about our story?" Noah asked. He was now 8 and proudly told classmates that his mother was famous for helping people. "Yes, baby. And they want to help more families like we used to be." "Are you going to build houses in every city?" Lily wondered. "We're going to try, sweetheart." The next morning brought news that would change everything. Kate received a call from the MacArthur Foundation. "Ms. Williams, you've been selected as a MacArthur Fellow for your revolutionary work in housing design and social justice. The award comes with $800,000 over 5 years to continue your work." Kate sat in her hotel room, overwhelmed by how far she had come from that desperate night in the Walmart parking lot when she had cried out to God for help. Her phone rang again. This time it was Sarah Mitchell from Second Chances Ministry. "Kate, I have someone here who wants to speak with you." "Ms. and Kate, this is Maria Santos from New Hope Village. I just graduated from nursing school, and I wanted to thank you for giving me the stability to pursue my dream." Kate remembered Maria, the single mother who had spoken so movingly about dignity and hope at the community meeting. "Maria, I'm so proud of you. How are your children?" "They're thriving. My daughter is in honors classes, and my son joined the soccer team." "Ms. Kate, because of what you built for us, my children believe anything is possible." When Kate returned to Atlanta, she found her own children had organized a surprise celebration at their home. Ethan, now 13, had made a poster reading, "Our Mom Builds Hope." Lily, 11, had baked a cake with MacArthur Genius written in frosting. And Noah had drawn a picture of families holding hands in front of beautiful houses. "Mom," Ethan said seriously, "remember when we used to live in the car and you would cry when you thought we were asleep?" Kate's throat tightened. "I remember, sweetheart. I'm glad all that happened to us." "Why, Ethan?" "Because if it hadn't, you never would have learned how to help all those other families. Sometimes God lets bad things happen so good people can do great things." As Kate tucked her children into bed that night in their permanent home, the home they had earned through struggle and grace, she reflected on the mysterious ways that God had woven purpose from pain. The architect who had once designed buildings for profit had become the architect of hope for thousands of families across America. But Kate's greatest achievement wasn't the awards or recognition. It was knowing that her children had learned that real success meant lifting others up from where you've been. Tomorrow, she would begin designing Hope Builders' most ambitious project yet, a 500-home community in Detroit where automotive workers could rebuild their lives after plant closures. Kate Williams had discovered that sometimes you have to lose everything to find your true calling. 5 years after receiving the MacArthur Fellowship, Kate Williams stood in the Rose Garden of the White House, preparing to receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom from President Biden. At 43, she had become one of the most influential social architects in American history. The Presidential Medal of Freedom is our nation's highest civilian honor, President Biden announced to the gathered crowd. Today, we honor Catherine Williams, whose personal journey from homelessness to hope has transformed how America houses its most vulnerable families. As Kate stepped forward to receive the medal, she thought about the extraordinary journey that had brought her to this moment. Hope Builders now operated in all 50 states, had housed over 25,000 families, and had inspired a global movement in dignified, affordable housing. Her children, Ethan, now 18, and heading to MIT to study sustainable architecture, Lily, 16, and volunteering with homeless youth, and Noah, 13, and already showing artistic talent, watched proudly from the audience. "Ms. Williams," the president said as he placed the medal around her neck, "you've proven that America's greatest strength is our ability to transform personal pain into public purpose." In her acceptance speech, Kate addressed the nation. "Mr. President, 5 years ago, my children and I were sleeping in our car, wondering if anyone cared about families like ours. Today, I stand here not because I'm extraordinary, but because extraordinary things happen when we refuse to let circumstances define our destiny. After the ceremony, Kate was approached by Oprah Winfrey, who had followed her story for years. Kate, your memoir, From Parking Lots to Purpose, has inspired millions. What's next for Hope Builders? Oprah, we're launching our most ambitious project yet, the Global Housing Dignity Initiative. We're partnering with the United Nations to bring our community design model to refugee camps and displaced populations worldwide. That evening at the celebration dinner, Kate was surprised by a video message from an unexpected source. Melissa Morrison, now living under her new identity, but still supporting Hope Builders anonymously. Kate, seeing you receive this honor fills my heart with joy. You took the worst thing that happened to you and turned it into the best thing that could happen to thousands of other families. Thank you for showing me what real redemption looks like. The next morning, Kate returned to Atlanta and drove straight to New Hope Village, the community that had started it all. The development had grown to 200 homes and included a thriving business district where residents owned shops and restaurants. Maria Santos, now a registered nurse and community health coordinator, greeted Kate at the community center. "Ms. Kate, look what arrived today," Maria said, showing her a letter from a family in Detroit whose lives had been transformed by a Hope Builders community. "Dear Ms. Williams, our daughter just got accepted to college with a full scholarship. She says she wants to become an architect like you and build hope for other families. Thank you for showing us that where you live shapes who you become." As Kate walked through New Hope Village, she was amazed by what she saw. Children who had once lived in cars were now honor students. Parents who had been unemployed for months were now small business owners. Families who had been isolated by poverty were now part of a thriving community. At the community garden, the heart of every Hope Builders development, Kate found a new addition, a memorial wall with photos and stories of families who had found hope in their communities. One plaque particularly caught her attention, dedicated to Catherine Williams, who taught us that home isn't just where you live, it's where you belong. That evening, Kate sat in her own home with her 3 children, helping Noah with his homework, while Ethan video called from MIT and Lily practiced her presentation for a youth homelessness conference. "Mom," Noah asked, "do you ever wish none of the bad stuff had happened to us?" Kate considered the question carefully. "Noah, if the bad stuff hadn't happened, I never would have understood how to help other families going through the same thing. Sometimes God allows us to go through valleys so we can guide others to the mountaintop." "Are you happy now?" he asked. Kate looked around at her children. Confident, compassionate young people who had learned that adversity builds character and that privilege comes with responsibility to serve others. "Noah, I'm more than happy. I'm fulfilled. There's a difference between getting what you want and becoming who you're meant to be." Alil, as Kate tucked Noah into bed, she reflected on the extraordinary transformation that had occurred, not just in her circumstances, but in her understanding of success, purpose, and the meaning of home. The woman who had once measured her worth by the height of buildings she designed, now measured it by the depth of hope she had restored in families who had lost everything. Kate Williams had learned that sometimes you have to lose your way to find your purpose, lose your pride to find your calling, and lose everything you thought you needed to discover everything you were meant to give. From a Walmart parking lot to the White House Rose Garden, her journey proved that no situation is too desperate for God to transform into triumph, and no person is too broken to become an instrument of healing for others. The architect of hope had built her greatest masterpiece, a legacy that would shelter families for generations to come. Kate Williams' story continues to inspire millions around the world, proving that our greatest trials often become our most powerful testimonies. Today, Hope Builders communities span 6 continents, and her children carry on the mission of building dignity through thoughtful design. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that rock bottom can become the foundation for your greatest comeback, don't let this moment pass. Share this video with someone who needs to know that their current struggle might be preparing them for their future strength. Like this video, if you believe that God can use anyone's pain to become someone else's hope. Subscribe, because we'll continue sharing real testimonies that prove your worst chapter doesn't have to be your final chapter. Remember, your setbacks are setups for your comebacks. Your mess can become your message. And sometimes, losing everything is the first step toward finding your true purpose. Share Kate's story. Your encouragement might be exactly what someone needs to keep going.